The only thing worse than getting cancer is finding out that you were deliberately given cancer in order for pharmaceutical and big food interests to profit. Have you begun to understand that big food and big pharma cooperate in order to keep you perpetually sick? That there is demonstrable science that proves that sugar and processed food are causing diabetes, heart disease, and cancer at unnecessary, inconceivable rates, that this data is not being acted upon because it's too profitable to stop. I had a fantastic conversation with Callie Means, a whistleblower and activist who exposes corruption in big food and big pharma. You got to stay to the end of this conversation. It's unbelievable. The level of revelations, the depth, the breadth of corruption is very hard to comprehend. Stay with us to the end.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Let me to dive into specifics. Let me paint it this way. I'm also a new dad, and that's highly motivating to me. And let's just look at the pure economics of a sick child. Okay, so let's think about a 15-year-old lower income child, okay? And the dirty secret, and just from purely financially speaking, that child in America is an absolute gold mine, because that child probably has prediabetes, which is from ultra processed food, probably has obesity, probably has high cholesterol, probably has high blood pressure. This is very common, right? 15% of kids right now have fatty liver disease, which used to be only a disease you saw in elderly alcoholics. So that kid, right, and the U.S. is on Medicaid. And Medicaid pays out. The budget is greater than the Defense Department. This is the healthcare for lower income folks. And a sick kid with chronic conditions, what does that mean? The kid's not going to die, but for the rest of their life, they need a statin for their cholesterol. They need metformin and insulin for their diabetes. They need inevitably Adderall, which 15% of kids are, for their ADHD. They need Ambien because they're going to have sleep problems from all these issues. They're going to need opioids because they're going to be in chronic pain. They're going to inevitably have fertility issues. Male sperm count's down 50%, so they're going to need medication for that. They're inevitably going to have erectile dysfunction, which is just constrainment of the blood vessels, which is basically the same thing as heart disease. They're going to be on all these pills, right? And the medical system looks at that, we're treating that person, right? That's what's bankrupting the United States right now, far greater than defense, far greater than any other line item, is these people that get sick early and they're treated, okay? So the medical system looks at that and says, that kid is going to go to 6 different doctors. As I said, my sister, she didn't learn about the overall metabolic health of how ultra-processed food hurts our cells and shows up in all of those symptoms. She was a head and neck surgeon. She was going to devote her entire life to 1 square millimeter of the body, 1 square millimeter, which she was going to do a fellowship in. And that's all she was going to focus on. That's how you rise up in medicine. You segment the body. So this is very profitable. That child who's going to have a ton of comorbidities is very profitable. And there's a lot of incentives to make this complicated. There's a lot of incentives to send that kid to 6 different doctors, to a psychologist for that SSRI, to a neurologist for the ADHD medication, for the cardiologist for the heart disease. These are all the same thing. These are all the same thing. So are the doctors evil who are prescribing that statin? No, that's the system they're in. Although doctors are catching on to this. Doctors have the highest suicide rate and the highest burnout rate of any profession in the country. So I think they're getting in for the right reasons, but realizing patients aren't getting better. And so on the food company, I think what food's doing is understandable. Food is trying to make food cheaper and more addictive. And there's 3 main ingredients that we've shifted our diet to. It's sugar, which is 100x more sugar we're eating than 100 years ago. Processed sugar, added sugar really wasn't a thing 100 years ago. That's a staple of our diet. Highly processed grains, which didn't exist until 1900, which is where you take the fiber off, it's shelf stable, no nutrition, and then because the fiber's out, it's a glucose bomb. And then this is important, seed oils. Seed oils are the top source of American fat right now. These were created by John Rockefeller in the early 1900s as an industrial byproduct from oil production. Not joking. Our main source of fat, when you look at the label, canola oil, soybean oil, this is an industrial byproduct that's much cheaper than good fats like olive oil, avocado oil, ghee, grass-fed butter, things like that. That's the staple of our diet. So this isn't a big mystery. We're eating inflammatory things. We're putting into our body, everything is tied to inflammation. So I talked to my sister, she's looking at that patient with inflammation. Inflammation usually was a good thing. It's the body coming to foreign things in the body. The problem in America right now is that 75% of our diet is ultra-processed fake food, which we were not biologically made to eat. Our body is reacting to foreign substances and causing all this disease. If you took out those 3 ingredients, sugar, seed oils, and highly processed grains, this is not hyperbolic. You would not have heart disease, which is the #1 killer. You would not have type 2 diabetes. You would actually eliminate, to a large degree, Alzheimer's, which is now called type 3 diabetes, many forms of cancer, infertility. All of these things relate to food, but there's profit, Russell, in complicating the issue.
Bloody hell.
But I want to make some points on the top down. because I think this is really important. A lot of people throw up their hands and say, well, it's hard to diet, it's hard to exercise. No. 25% of kids having prediabetes right now is hard. 45% of kids being overweight or obese is hard. 93% of Americans having metabolic dysfunction right now. This is hard. We are destroying our country due to metabolic dysfunction. And there's actually very simple things we can do. So number one, we need to realize that we are playing into the game. And I actually met with a bunch of Republicans today. And if you remember, the Republicans under Trump had an opportunity to put a proposal down to reform Obamacare, and they had nothing. The reality right now is that the left and the right is basically just talking about marginal improvements to the existing broken system. You are absolutely right. Everyone needs, and I will say, politicians, I think, are waking up to this. It's not about slightly altering Medicare Part D. It's not about going into page 300 in the Medicaid law. It is understanding that the problem with healthcare is that every single lever that touches our health profits off people being sick and loses money when they're healthy. The problem is healthcare is the most employed industry in the country, and everyone from a pharma company to a hospital to a medical school, they make more money when more people are sick, which is exactly what's happening. Even insurance companies, which people think should want to save money, actually now they can only take 15% profit margin, and by law in Obamacare can actually raise premiums to get that 15%. So they actually, since they're capped at 15%, want costs to grow, which is exactly what's happened in the past decade. All that's happened is people get sicker, costs grow, and insurance company revenues go up. So we have to realize that one fact. And it's interesting. A lot of members of Congress care about this issue. A lot of them want to go up against their lobbyists, but actually they don't even understand the simple fact. The problem is that incentive. So what can you do right now? A couple quick things, Russell. The most shameful policy in America, in my opinion, the most shining example of corporate cronyism, really evil towards kids, is the fact that the USDA, the most influential health organization and food organization in the country, and I would probably the world, they recommend 10% added sugar for 2-year-olds and up. They, in the USDA federal nutrition guidelines, guide up to 10% added sugar for an American 2 years and up. To me, this is absolutely shameful. Sugar is a highly addictive drug. There's big differences between stronger drugs like heroin, but when you do brain imaging scans, the dopamine release is very similar to any other drug like that. And we're normalizing that. And the government is actually saying it's okay for 2-year-olds, 10% of their diet to be added sugar. That could be changed tomorrow. But why is it that way? 95% of the folks in 2020 who made the nutritional guidelines had a conflict of interest directly paid by food and or pharma companies. And now in 2025, in the administration for President Biden on the updated nutrition guidelines, Dr. Fatima Stanford, who you've talked about, the Harvard obesity doctor who said obesity is genetic and not the result of food. You can't make this up, but she is literally on the nutrition guidelines, making guidelines not only for the U.S., but that impacts the world, saying sugar, inevitably she will not reduce the sugar. So the key point here, Russell, is that for better or worse, Americans listen to medical authorities. When the Surgeon General in the 1980s said smoking was bad, many years too late, the smoking plummeted. Philip Morris at the time was one of the 5 largest companies in the world when that Surgeon General's report came out. In the 1990s, we remember the food pyramid, which said, eat more carbs. Carb consumption went up 20% in America. That was disastrous. And then for better or worse, when Dr. Fauci told Americans to get the vaccine, I think it's close to 90% of people got one of the vaccines. People listen to what authorities say for better or worse. If sugar, there should be no guidance for sugar. We do not guide kids that they should have a certain range of cigarettes or alcohol. The only difference is that sugar, am I in a bizarre world? Are we not being brought to our knees by metabolic dysfunction caused chiefly by sugar? I don't think anyone even disagrees with that. So why the hell are we recommending that? And we can go into others, Russell. Just the one other thing I'd say, getting to the food stamp issue in Coke, when I worked for them, there is a systematic, like the cigarette companies, just a systematic rigging of the institution of trust. Coke and processed food companies spend 11 times more nutritional research than the NIH. In the past 2 years, there was 50,000 nutrition studies done, peer-reviewed nutrition studies. Again, meeting with members of Congress today, they have lobbyists in their office every single day, handing them a different study. The only goal of those studies is to confuse the congressman.